Hello, I am Reverend Irene Smith, and I'd like to welcome you to Generationally Speaking. Here at the table, we come and we discuss life issues, no matter what they might be. As we sit at the table with each generation, we all learn, we all grow, we all are inspired.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Generationally Speaking. Hello, I am Reverend Irene Smith, your host for Generationally Speaking, and I want to welcome you to the table today as we sit at the table of discernment. I always say when you sit at the table, you sit with the elders, those who've already paved the way, those who can talk to us about their struggles and how they made it over. We sit at the table with the millennials who have to use this technology, and they can show us and how technology has impacted their lives and also the struggles that they're going through. And then we sit at the table with our younger voices, those who have those aspirations for the future. So today I'm excited to introduce to you Gebray Billups, who comes today to share her journey. It's not often that you meet young people, young women, young men who have gone through the struggles of life and they've been able to overcome. And in their overcoming, they have so many life lessons that they can share with us to help us so that when we face what they faced or similar situations, we can recall, hey, Gebray made it. God brought her through, and he can bring you through too. Gebray, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me today.
Share with us a little bit about your early years. Where did you grow up?
Okay, I grew up in a very small town in Alabama called Hayneville, Alabama. Actually, is where the Freedom March started with Martin Luther King from the march from Selma to Alabama. The area where they actually encamped at is my hometown, which is Whitehall. They actually were writing a documentary on it. But my mother was a single mom. I was myself and my brother, and my mother was a very strong woman, very faith based woman that really pushed me and my brother. She had my brother at the age of 14. She was married at 15. She had me at 16.
Wow.
So with that being said, actually when I got pregnant with my son, I was actually 3 months shy of my 16th birthday. My mother said, no, you're not going to drop out of school. You're going to finish school. And she pretty much just stood by me, and she's deceased, but honor to God. I thank God for her for really pushing me to be better than what my situation at the time showed. But throughout that, with her being by my side and pushing me, I have a bachelor's in business. I also have a master's in business. I am married. I'm a mother of three. I have three grandchildren as well. I've been married now almost 22 years. My children are ages 33, 29, and 21.
When you said 33, I'm like, you look like you're 33.
That's because God's favor.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about your mom, who played such an impactful role in your life. At 16, 15, 16, having pregnant and having a child, but having your mother say, no, this is not where you're going to stop. What did that do for you as a young woman?
It really made me embrace just really her, her strength and her tenacity to the place that when I actually earned my bachelor's degree, it was my honorary degree to her.
Wow.
Because I told her that, because my mother didn't finish school. She actually, after she had me, she dropped out of school, although her parents pushed her. Now, let me give a little bit of my mother's background. My mother was number 15 of 17 kids.
Wow.
So, for her, she did not finish high school. She said no. She took motherhood first, and she put everything into myself and into my brother. And so, I just me, I had to pay it forward. I had to give it back. because I knew that in everything she had given up, I never wanted her to feel like she had failed. So it was important for me to be able to hold that degree in my hand and say, Mommy, I would not have had this if it were not for you. And that's the truth. I would not have had it.
So with this baby and, um, sometimes there's a stigma that's attached to it, and then trying to do college. So did you go away to college, or did you do college from home? How did that work?
So actually, I started doing college locally,
Okay.
and I got pregnant again. And now, yeah, actually, I got pregnant again, and my mom's like, "Look, you know, I got pregnant again." And but my daughter and I, shortly after I gave birth to my daughter, we were in a very bad car accident where my daughter ended up we got hit by 18-wheeler, and it ended up where she had to wear a body cast. So after 2 years, I stopped going. So it actually wasn't until I moved away from Alabama and I came to Georgia. At this time, when I went back to school, I was, I'm going to say 20, maybe 30. I was actually 30 years old before I actually say, you know what, I got to do this. I still got to do this. And even then, my mother was pushing me. And God actually intervened now because you're going to be the first one in your family or your mom, to make this. So you need to go back to school. So I had a job that I'm working, and I'm working in good work ethic because my mother just put that there too. And they said, you can't have this promotion because you don't have a degree.
Right.
And at that moment, I said, nobody will ever tell me what I will not have because of lack of education. And so I went back to school. I graduated with my undergrad degree in 2008. And that degree, like I said, was for myself and for my mom and for my kids. Because I was a young mother, a single mother, when I had the first two, I wanted to be able to show them it's not where you come from, but where you're going. So I got my master's in May of 2010.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
So I just continued to press forward. And each time, my mother was standing there with me, through those moments. And so it was throughout, it was a journey. It has been a journey. I've learned a lot. God has shown me a lot, and God has really put people around me who have embraced me. Because even when the world looked at my situation and statistics said, hey, you are now 20 years old, you have 2 kids, you're not married, you're not going to be successful, you're not, every time the devil said what I wasn't going to be, I had my mother speaking and say, no, greater is he that is in me. And that has just always just been an imprint from my grandmothers. I was blessed to have older women around me as well, because at the age of 15, prior to me actually getting pregnant with my son, I attempted suicide. I actually had attempted suicide twice before my son was born and once after he was born. And the time that I attempted after he was born, he may have been a year old. And I remember coming through and him leaning over me, this, small baby. And I'm looking at, and I'm like, and I was sick because I'd taken all these pills or whatever. And I just knew I wasn't going to make it to the next morning. But God said no. And I'm looking at my son, he became my reason to say, you got to live, because if you die, what happens to him? So there were a lot of things, Reverend Smith, that were on my side, that even though Satan had set the trap, God had already spoken to my existence. So,
Gebray, as you're talking and you're gazing, I can feel the intensity, as if you've sort of traveled back, and you are now able to even feel those emotions that you had at that time. And so, when you talk about suicide, let's talk about, for those who are watching, who may find themselves in that same place as a young person, what is the darkness that covers you, that makes you say, there's no other way?
Oftentimes, you feel like you are just trapped and you don't have people that you can't talk to. You can't um, basically share what you're going through. And during this time, you're this little girl and everybody say, oh, she's so pretty. She's so this, she's so that, she's so smart. But you also become that person that everybody wants to touch.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and those touches are not, you recognize those are not the touches that you want. And the people that you think are supposed to be protecting you are the people that are hurting you. And a part of you says that, it has to be easier on the other side. So, and then my mom, never wanted to disappoint her, never, wanting to ever make her feel like she failed. You just kind of keep it to yourself. And you say, well, maybe the world would just be better if I wasn't here. And I tell people all the time, you never really know what people are going through. When you look at them, they look like the strongest people in the world. But they're standing, on shattered glass in 8-inch heels. And, and you just never, you just don't know. And that was my world. I was, you're this smart person. Everybody's saying that you're pretty, you're this, and you just feel like you have no voice.
Yeah.
And then you're afraid, well, if I say this or if I say that, how's my mom gonna react? How's this person gonna react? And you don't want to add no more chaos to where you are because you're just trying to get through. And my mother at the time too was in a relationship that was very abusive. Mm-hmm. And she just kind of stayed in it because of me having my son. Mm-hmm. It put her in a position because when I got pregnant with my son, I was entering into the 11th grade. And my mother said, she just stopped working. She's like, no, I'm not going to work. I'm going to stay here and I'm going to take care of my grandbaby. And she stayed there for 2 years and she didn't work. Wow. Because she wanted to make sure that I had no reason not to go to school. And that relationship that she was in, she took a lot. Yeah. She took it verbally, emotionally, physically, mentally. She took it. So every day it was survival of the fittest. You got something here that you got to do. And it just made you fight, made you go a little bit harder.
In that birth of your second child, did you find yourself perhaps searching for a special kind of love, a special kind of affection, a special kind of acceptance?
I think a lot of that, even I think with my first son, you just kind of say, you want someone who actually looks at you and see you for a person and say, okay, I actually, love you regardless to who you are, and all my nakedness, and I'm talking about my nakedness, I love you. And then with my daughter, yeah, it came along. And I had this thing, God is amazing because I'd always said, even before I had kids, I said, God, I want me a boy first. I had this thing. And with my daughter, when I got pregnant with my daughter, my mom, I was afraid to even tell her because I didn't want to disappoint her. And I actually gave birth to my daughter traveling to the hospital. So I gave birth to my daughter in the car.
Wow.
That was when my mother learned I was pregnant.
Ooh.
So that was a lot of things, that was my mother's name is on my daughter's birth certificate because she ended up having to deliver. So there was some dark moments, there were some special moments. And even then I didn't feel accepted. And it was this older lady in our neighborhood. She used to say to me all the time, she says, every time you walk with your head down. So why you walk with your head down? And, she saw the heaviness, she saw the weight. And she said, don't you ever, baby, let me catch you walking with your head down. She said, unless you're looking down to clean your shoes. And she said, yeah, she said, you walk and you hold your head up because the true acceptance comes from when you learn to love yourself.
Yeah.
And so my mother would push that and she would constantly say, you're a phoenix. you'll rise every time. It doesn't matter. Rise, you're gonna rise. And I'm really, I couldn't have asked for a better mother.
Amen.
I couldn't have asked for a better.
So you have these two children and you move. What made you move?
Well, I had started dating this guy that I met when I was in high school. Actually, I met him when I was 12 years old. We didn't date in school or anything, but after high school, we did start dating. And he took a job here in Georgia as a manager, and we dated long distance for about 6 months. And that was in 1998 that he came here, and he asked me to come up, and I came up in January of 1999, and I've been here ever since.
All
So
right.
that was pretty much the start of it, coming here. And he didn't have any kids. So it was just me and my two kids. I came in January, and my children stayed with my mom until we made the transition for about 6 weeks. And I would go back at the end of February, first part of March of 1999, and I would bring my kids here. And so they would be raised here. At the time, they were 4 and 8.
Okay.
So those were the first two. My younger son, he was born in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
So my two older kids, which my oldest is Quintus, which is actually Quintus is now deceased. He was killed in 2017. And he's actually the reason that I launched my nonprofit organization, which is Finding Answers Inside the Home, aka Faith.
Mm-hmm.
And it strives to help those who are living or caring for those who have a mental health or disorder or illness to be able to find resources within the community that will help them to be able to sustain and live healthier lives.
So are you saying that Quentin had some mental difficulties?
He did, yes. So Quintus, at the age of 18, he joined the Navy, and he went off to, they sent him up to San Diego, and he served some time there, but he ended up having to be immediately shipped into war on terrorism. And at that point, while he was out at sea for those 8 months, that the mental health issues would start to flare. Typically, doctors, when we kind of look back, you can say, well, we never saw any type of mental health issues as he was growing up. What was the issue? And they said typically it trauma, childhood trauma, even adulthood trauma will cause it to happen. And so being out there at war, because a Marine time they're at sea, he just, it was more than he could deal with. And so I guess a lot of those traumas, which I look back now, Reverend Smith, I take ownership to myself because he lived a lot through my trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when we don't deal with our own traumas, we have the ability to pass them on to our kids.
So when you think back now of your son's early years in middle school and high school, now, some time has passed. Do you see any indication of, wow, I didn't know what that meant when I saw him acting out? I didn't quite understand it.
Yes, I look back, I see a lot of it. Quintus was very smart. Let me say it, very smart. With me having the attitude, we can't lose. That was my attitude. We can't lose. Quintus was potty trained before he was a year and a half old. Yes, he started walking like 7 months old. Everything was fast tracked. And so I saw an opportunity to teach him. So I would teach him his name, not just his name, to spell his name, to write his name, his ABCs. So by the time he actually entered into pre-K, he knew things that the average student didn't know. He knew his phone number, he knew his address, he knew his mommy name, and he could spell his mommy name. And his mommy has a long name.
Okay.
My first name is Awaniki.
Oh, okay.
And he could spell his mommy name. He was just really smart. So a lot of times when he would get in trouble, we just took it to where he was just bored, like, wait, he's really bored. And as he would get older, once we made it to the Georgia school system, it continued to escalate. He could not sit still.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so common at the time to diagnose the Black male with ADHD or
Right.
ADD. Um, you kind of like, okay, well, that's common. That's a normal behavior. But I think back not just to the behavior, but just how he responded to me. He was always protective of me. And I think he took on more responsibility than he should have as a kid. But I guess a part of him, even though I'm thinking he would never remember me trying to kill myself, he would never remember me. I think he may not have remembered, but I think he saw the hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And he spent years of just trying to comfort me and leaving me and going off to war, and the fear of not being able to come home was a fear that I think he just could not, it just really set off some chemical imbalances that, that just could, that would later lead to his death.
Mm-hmm. So, your daughter, how was she impacted with when they were coming through school? Was it day and night or
Day and night? Yes. She's very smart. Oh my God. And I'm not boasting on my daughter. My daughter is very smart. Oh my God. But she was more responsible. She was the responsible one. I think with her seeing a lot of the things that I was going through with Quintus, she was like I was with my mom. You got to be that thing that's stable. So she was always that person that was stable. She carried more responsibility than Quintus, even though he was almost 4 years older than her. They're 3 years, 9 months apart.
mm-hmm.
And she was just the responsible one, but she handled it. Birth of my third son, and at this time I'm in school. Was these ages? She's 8, 9 years old, and I'm having to go to school at night. And even though my husband was here, she was a trooper. She was keeping it down, making sure he gets a bath, making sure, she was really, she really stepped in, and she took on a lot. And I think it grew her relationship with her brother, but in moments it probably separated her relationship with her brother, because I'm the middle child and I'm having to do all of this. And we would both learn together, my daughter and I, what mental health really was. In fact, my son's mental health, with him returning from the military and him being diagnosed with as schizoaffective, it would actually change my daughter's career path.
Mm-hmm.
She went into college initially to be a lawyer. She majored in criminal justice, changed that forensic psychology.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So, as your son, when he went off to the military and came in, so things went awry at the military, and they discharged him, I guess, a medical discharge. And so he came home. And so, what do you do when he comes home?
So he would come home in December of 2011. But prior to him coming home, he was discharged in July from the military, July of 2011. And he didn't want to come home, because coming home meant he was in California. So coming home meant I failed. Mm-hmm. And even though we were trying to get him home, my mom and I, he's like, no, Mom, I'm going to stay out here. But that wasn't a good thing for him, because he ended up losing all his money. Because when you got money, you got friends.
Right.
And when the money runs low and your friends don't understand why you're acting out or you're behaving a certain way, because they don't understand mental health, they would later not want to be bothered with him. And he would live homeless for a while there. In October of 2011, he was just really bouncing back and forth, and he gets a DUI. And I'm like, you need to come home. And he's like, no, Mommy, I'm not coming home. He's sleeping in his car. By Thanksgiving, November 2011, I get a call from the hospital that he had alcohol poison, that he had enough alcohol in it to actually intoxicate you, me, and one other. Mm-hmm. And the nurse called me because she said when he had come through after being out for almost 3 days, that he was there and he was alone. And he was 21 years old. So she said that she felt obligated to call as a mother. And that would start us our journey. Once he gets out, my mother and I would get him a bus ticket and put him on Greyhound. And my mother wanted to see him first. So we brought him to Alabama first. And so he arrived in Alabama to my mom on December the 22nd of 2011. And she called me and she says, he's not the same. Something is wrong. So she brings him to me December 24th of 2011. And immediately when I saw him, it's my son, but it's not my son. And he would have a psychotic break that night where he would end up leaving the house and walking the road 3:00 in the morning. And I had called my insurance company because I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with him, but I need to get him help. And they could not get him anywhere until after the holidays. So January the 3rd, 2012 was his first appointment. And from there, we would be on our journey of learning the importance of mental health, what mental health work was, and just going through educating ourselves. There were some good days, there were some bad days, and there were days where I had to recognize this is not my son. I'm not talking to my son today. Remove your emotions. This is not him. You know, when it's him, he's lovable, he's sweet. But then there was days where he was angry and he was crying, and you're fighting to understand what role did you play.